Hello everybody and welcome to another video of Del's Jogs with Dogs. Now unfortunately there's not going to be any running today. I'm still recovering from the Snow Queen Ultra last week, but the good news is that Wilson and I did go out for a little 8k run this morning, and here's a little snippet from that run if you'd like to take a peek. Now, one of the questions I frequently get asked when I do things like the Snow Queen Ultra and those kind of distances is how on earth do I keep myself fueled? Well, on my Facebook memories today, 3 years ago today, I was competing in the Across the Years 24-hour race. And on that day, I actually fueled myself along with Jaffa cakes and malt bread on Staffordshire Oatcakes. Now, being a Staffordshire girl from the UK, I thought for this video, why not make Staffordshire Oatcakes? So that's what we're going to do today. Now, there's lots of recipes out there if you Google online, but the one I'm going to use actually has these ingredients. And what we've got here is 450 millilitres of milk, 450 millilitres of warm water. We've got 250 grams of oats, 100 grams of wholemeal flour, 100 grams of white flour, a teaspoonful of salt, and 4 grams of dried yeast. And the first thing we have to do is heat up the milk and water and add the yeast. So that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, so whilst your liquids are warming up, we can start to mix the dry ingredients. So first of all, we put in the oats and then the flour. And of course, the salt. And then we just give that a good mix and make sure that it's all balanced out. Okay, so the milk and water is now warmed up. This is where we add the yeast to get the yeast warmed up. We just tip that in there, and again, we just give that a bit of a stir. Oh, that smells good already. And then the idea with this is we add the liquid to the dry ingredients to make a form of batter. Okay, and we just tip this in slowly and just start to mix it. Now, you may find that there could be too much liquid, there may be too little liquid, but what the recipe for this particular version of oatcake says is so that it's like whipped cream. The same texture as whipped cream. So, and this is looking pretty good. Okay, I think that's looking fine right now. I don't know if you can see that, but as you can see, it's looking like a batter. And now what we have to do, we have to cover that with cling film for an hour or so and keep it somewhere warm to give the yeast a chance to become active and do its thing. So there we go. And so we just cover it with some cling film. Just make sure it's nice and secure around there. There we go. And what you should notice in the next hour or so, whilst that's just sitting there, make sure you put it somewhere warm, is that you should notice bubbles coming on it, on the batter. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this has been sitting here for approximately an hour now, maybe a little longer. As you can see, it started bubbling a little bit. So now we're going to heat up some oil and get these oatcakes going. Now I'm just going to coat the pan. If you use a non-stick pan, and just coat it with a little bit of oil. You don't have to go crazy. And then just scoop some of the batter in there. This is supposed to be hot. It's not quite heated up yet, so a little bit more in there. And then if we just spread this out and let it do its thing. Now I should add that I am by no means a chef or an expert cook, and whilst I have made oatcakes a couple of times in the past, I certainly wouldn't be employed in an oatcake shop in Stoke. But hey, there's only me and my husband eating these. They're great fuel for running, and for me, that's all that matters. Okay. So what we do, we cook it for 2 to 3 minutes on one side, and then we flip them over for a minute or so on the other. So I'm just going to let that sizzle for a minute or two. As you can see, it's starting to cook on the edges. It's starting to look like an oatcake, which is promising. One of the problems I do have is sometimes I make them a little thick. So it's probably important to try and spread that batter a little thinly. But you always have to be very careful. If you spread it too thin, they will split. Oh, it's starting to smell good too. It reminds me of the oatcake shop in Church Street in Stoke. A little peek underneath. Oh yes, it's doing nicely, that is. I'll just give it another minute or so. Now I wouldn't recommend flipping these like a pancake, as I say, they do break easily. But you can certainly turn them over and hope. There we go. And you could probably leave this one a little bit longer so that it browns a little more. Of course, the real test will come when we start to put some cheese and bacon on there, or cheese and sausage. Now, some recipes do use wholemeal flour, just purely a wholemeal rather than a mix of white and brown. We found these to be a little bit heavier, so these ones with the white flour do tend to be a little bit lighter. Just a little bit more on that one. Right, that's probably done, I would say. One Staffordshire oatcake. Okay, let's try another one.
A few moments later.
So you should be able to get a good half a dozen at least out of this mix. And I think half a dozen oatcakes are enough for anybody really, no matter how much you love them. And the other thing to mention is that if you did want to make a large batch of them, they do freeze very well. So you can make a batch and put them in the freezer and they will last, and then you just pop them in the microwave to defrost them when you decide you want to eat them. You can smell it, it smells good. As you see, this one's browning a little bit better than the other, so we probably had the heat a little bit too high on that last one. But this is browning quite nicely. Now I'll just give it another minute or so on this side. Alrighty, that one's probably done too. Yeah, he's getting nice and brown on that side. Let's move it off the heat. Now I'm not sure if I've already mentioned, but if you use parchment paper in between each of the oatcakes, it does stop them sticking together. So that's all that is here in between them. There's number 2. Okay, I'm going to carry on and use up the rest of this batter, and then I'll let you know in a couple of minutes how many we managed to get out of this particular recipe. So here's the finished product. We managed to get 8 oatcakes out of that batch. We could have probably got a few more had we made them a little thinner. But with that being said, I'm really happy with how they've turned out, having had a 3-year break from cooking them. But I suppose the real test comes from how they taste. And we're going to put some melted cheese on them now and have a cup of tea. Now, of course, you can have bacon and sausage and cheese on these oatcakes, but you can also put things like berries and fresh cream in there if you like. They do have a similar texture to a pancake, but they are not a pancake. So if you come from outside the UK, I suggest you give oatcakes a try and just see if you can taste the difference. Well, that concludes our evening of oatcake making. I'm now here with my strong cup of Thai food tea and a homemade oatcake. Tastes divine. Now, as I said earlier, you can obviously have sausage or bacon with these, but I'm perfectly content at this moment to just have them with just gold cheddar cheese. So on that note, I hope that you'll give this recipe a go. Please let me know how you get on, and if you find a better way of making oatcakes, then let me know in the comments below. And of course, if you've enjoyed watching this video, if you enjoy running and running with dogs, or if you want to know more about runner's fuel or ultra running or any of those kind of things, again, please comment below, or subscribe to my channel and get regular updates. April, come here. You see, even the dogs approve. Tilly? Definite thumbs up. Oh, somebody's trying to change them. Wilson? Wilson's very choosy. He only likes the Queen's best. But certainly my Mexican girls approve. Num, num, num. Goodbye, everybody. Happy New Year to you all.